What does it mean to become who you are? This was not merely a question for Friedrich Nietzsche. It was a central challenge that defined his entire philosophy and psychological investigation. While other thinkers pursued abstract truths or rigid moral systems, Nietzsche asked a more personal and unsettling question. How does one live a life of meaning, authenticity, and strength in a world stripped of certainty? Nietzsche believed that wisdom should serve life. Philosophy, in his view, must not only instruct, but invigorate. It should challenge us, shake us from complacency, and force us to grow. At the core of this challenge lies the concept of self-overcoming, the difficult, often painful process of confronting one's inner chaos and emerging stronger, more refined, and more complete. Modern humanity, Nietzsche believed, is trapped, caught between the pressures of a society demanding conformity and an inner world many are too afraid to explore. Most people avoid looking inward. They fear the truths buried within, their contradictions, impulses, and unresolved fears. Yet Nietzsche argued that only those brave enough to descend into their own depths can rise above the herd and shape themselves into something greater. The descent into the psyche, true transformation, Nietzsche asserted, begins with descent, not into despair, but into the labyrinth of the self. This is not a passive act of reflection. It is a psychological excavation, a confrontation with everything we hide or deny. Those who dare to undertake this journey must face the darker sides of their nature, suppressed desires, buried traumas, unconscious drives. In Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche warned that philosophy had failed to descend far enough into the soul. All psychology so far, he wrote, has got stuck in moral prejudices and fears. The real danger lies not in what we find, but in our refusal to look. Those who avoid self-examination, he believed, become weak, fragmented, and vulnerable to manipulation. They live at the surface, echoes of their culture, history, and environment, rather than as true individuals. But for some, this descent is not a choice. There are souls too deep, too turbulent to ignore. For them, self-exploration is survival. To live without self-mastery would mean being torn apart by internal contradictions. These individuals must impose order upon their chaos. To sculpt themselves, self-creation and the inner granite. Nietzsche's vision of the ideal human is not someone who conforms, but someone who creates not just art or ideas, but themselves. In Beyond Good and Evil, he speaks of a granite of spiritual fate deep within each person, something unteachable and unchangeable. This inner core, Nietzsche believed, is the foundation upon which we must build. Self-creation is not about inventing a personality. It is about uncovering, shaping, and amplifying the deepest truths already within us. Most people, he argued, never discover this inner truth. They become reflections of others, of tradition, of culture, of ideology. They are shaped by the past, rather than rising to shape themselves. To counter this, Nietzsche insisted we must also look outward, to history. He writes that direct self-observation is not enough. The forces that shaped ancient cultures, moral systems, and myths still flow through us. To understand ourselves, we must understand the echoes of history that still reverberate in our psyche. The beast and the divine animal, within every human, no matter how civilized, carries ancient instincts within. Nietzsche saw this as a potential source of power, not shame. While modern morality urges us to repress aggression, passion, and desire, Nietzsche proposed that we harness these wild energies. Like a river redirected to generate power, the chaos within us can fuel creativity, growth, and greatness. Modern man, Nietzsche believed, had become disconnected from his instincts, from what he called the divine animal. In losing touch with this primal intuition, we stumble through life over-reliant on intellect alone. But buried beneath our surface, thoughts lie deeper drives, forces that, if integrated, can make us whole. The role of suffering in self-overcoming modern society teaches us to avoid suffering at all costs. Comfort, convenience, and distraction are marketed as the ultimate goals of life. But Nietzsche radically disagreed. To him, suffering is not just a part of life, it is the crucible through which greatness is forged. "What does not kill me makes me stronger," he famously declared. Suffering, in Nietzsche's philosophy, is not something to escape. It is the fire in which we burn away what is weak, false, or stagnant. Without pain, there is no transformation. Without struggle, there is no self-overcoming. In The Gay Science, he writes, "You must be ready to burn in your own flame. How could you rise anew if you have not first become ashes?" Nietzsche found inspiration in the tragic heroes of ancient Greece, figures who suffered deeply but emerged resilient, wiser, and stronger. Likewise, he turned his own chronic illness, isolation, and disappointment into insight. He transmuted pain into philosophy. The will to power. At the heart of Nietzsche's worldview is the concept of the will to power, the drive within all living things to grow, to assert, to transform. Contrary to popular misinterpretation, Nietzsche did not define the will to power as a mere thirst for dominance over others. Instead, he saw it as a force of self-overcoming, of inner mastery. In Beyond Good and Evil, he writes, "Life itself is will to power. Nothing else matters." This force compels the artist to create, the thinker to seek truth, the individual to rise above limitation. It is the energy that propels transformation. Those who suppress their will to power, who deny their capacity for greatness, become passive, mediocre, and dependent. Nietzsche viewed this passivity as a danger to the human spirit. True strength, he argued, comes from affirming this drive, even when it leads us into discomfort or conflict. Resentment and slave morality, one of Nietzsche's most powerful critiques, was aimed at what he called resentment, a psychological state rooted in envy and blame. Instead of striving to overcome weakness, the resentful person condemns the strong, justifies their failure, and redefines their lack of power as a moral virtue. In On the Genealogy of Morals, Nietzsche traces the development of slave morality, a system that glorifies obedience, humility, and victimhood, while demonizing strength, pride, and self-assertion. Christianity, democracy, and socialism were, in Nietzsche's eyes, symptoms of this morality. Rather than encouraging people to rise, slave morality pulls them down. It fosters a culture of resentment, where greatness is vilified and mediocrity celebrated. True self-overcoming, Nietzsche insists, requires a rejection of resentment. One must stop blaming others, stop seeking validation, and embrace personal responsibility with radical honesty. As he wrote, "Supposing I have the key to your chains, why should your lock and my lock be the same?" The Overman, rising beyond. The herd, Nietzsche's ultimate symbol of human potential, is the Übermensch, often translated as the Overman or Superman. This is not a physical ideal or a fantasy of dominance. It is a psychological and existential transformation. The Overman is the individual who has fully broken from the herd, who has destroyed inherited values and created new ones from within. He is the self-created man, one who does not seek approval, comfort, or conformity. He embraces life as it is and turns it into something beautiful, something meaningful. Man is something to be overcome, Nietzsche declares in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. The Overman is not a final destination but an ongoing process, a constant rebirth. He represents the highest form of the will to power, not to control others, but to master the self. This is the great challenge Nietzsche leaves us with. Will you remain with the herd, avoiding risk, avoiding responsibility, or will you dare to break free, to create yourself and to become who you truly are. Eternal recurrence, the ultimate test of life affirmation. Imagine this. A demon whispers in your ear one night and says, "This life, as you have lived it, you will live again, over and over, for all eternity. Every joy and every sorrow, every victory and every failure will repeat endlessly. Nothing will change. Would you curse the demon or bless him?" This is Nietzsche's eternal recurrence, a psychological and existential test. It is not meant to be taken as a literal cosmological claim, but as a spiritual mirror. If the thought of living your exact life on repeat fills you with dread, then something must change. If, however, you could affirm it, then you are living in alignment with your highest self. The challenge of eternal recurrence forces us to confront our choices, our regrets, and our potential. It asks, are you living a life so meaningful that you would be willing to live it forever? If not, why? This thought experiment is Nietzsche's most radical demand for authenticity. It eliminates excuses, delays, and fantasies. What matters is not what you wish life were, but whether you are choosing to live it well, right now, in this moment. Amor fati, the love of fate. Nietzsche didn't believe that accepting life was enough. He believed we must go further, we must love it. Amor fati, Latin for love of fate, is his call to embrace everything that happens, not with resignation, but with joy. My formula for greatness in a human being, he wrote, is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. To love fate is to see even suffering as necessary. It is to look at your life with all its chaos and contradiction and say, this too is part of my becoming. Most people fight reality. They regret the past, fear the future, and resist the present. Amor fati is the opposite. It is the radical act of affirming life exactly as it is, not despite its hardship, but because of it. Looking into the abyss, one of Nietzsche's most quoted warnings comes from beyond good and evil. He who fights with monsters should see to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. To look deeply within is dangerous. When we confront the darkness in ourselves, the anger, envy, fear, and contradiction, we risk becoming overwhelmed. Many people who set out on the path of self-exploration end up consumed by it. Nietzsche saw this clearly, and he was not immune. His own descent into madness was, in some sense, the price he paid for peering too deeply, yet he still believed the descent was necessary. Without it, we remain shallow, scattered, and enslaved by unexamined fears. The only way to truly grow is to face the abyss, and then learn to dance on its edge. The balance of Apollo and Dionysus in The Birth of Tragedy, Nietzsche introduces two symbolic forces within human nature: Apollo, the god of order, reason, and structure, and Dionysus, the god of chaos, passion, and destruction. To live fully, Nietzsche believed, we must integrate both forces. Too much Apollo leads to rigidity, lifeless control. Too much Dionysus leads to madness, instability, and self-destruction. But when harmonized, these energies create vitality, creativity, and meaning. The greatest individuals, the dancers on the edge of the abyss, know how to impose form on chaos without extinguishing the fire within. They don't suppress their instincts, they refine them. They don't reject passion, they shape it into art. This, Nietzsche believed, is the essence of the human spirit. The ability to take the raw, untamed elements of life, pain, passion, power, and transform them into something higher, not by escaping life, but by affirming it with strength, laughter, and fierce creativity. Section 4. The Free Spirit, the Last Man, and the Final Challenge. Approx. 740 words. And 5,400 characters with spaces. The free spirit and the courage to walk alone. Nietzsche's philosophy revolves around one central figure, the free spirit, an individual who has broken away from the herd, cast off inherited beliefs, and dared to create their own values. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he writes, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." To transcend the collective, to live by one's own compass, is to accept isolation, misunderstanding, and resistance. The free spirit is not merely someone who thinks differently, but someone who dares to live differently. This is not an easy path. The free spirit will often find themselves alone, ridiculed, and even feared. But Nietzsche saw this solitude not as a punishment, but as a necessary condition for self-mastery. Only in solitude can we hear our own voice clearly. Only away from the noise of the crowd can we forge something truly original. The Last Man. The end of aspiration. As a warning to the modern world, Nietzsche gave us the image of the last man, a creature of comfort, safety, and mediocrity. The last man avoids pain, risk, and ambition. He seeks only pleasure, approval, and security. He's the product of a society that fears greatness and worships convenience. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche describes the last man as one who says, "We have invented happiness," and then blinks. He feels no passion, no shame, no depth, only shallow contentment. There is no striving, no longing, no greatness, only inertia. Nietzsche feared that modern civilization, in its obsession with comfort and equality, would give rise to this spiritual deadness. He warned that if we continue to reject struggle, transcendence, and individuality, we will become not enlightened, but irrelevant. Revaluing all values, the path forward. The solution Nietzsche offered was radical, a revaluation of all values. The moral systems we have inherited, particularly from religion, were designed, he believed, not to elevate the strong, but to pacify them. They praise meekness, obedience, and guilt, and condemn strength, ambition, and joy. To become who we are, we must go beyond good and evil. We must challenge the moral assumptions we've accepted without question, and instead create new values, ones born from our own lived experience, our own power, our own potential. No price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself, Nietzsche declared. True freedom is not the absence of constraint, it is the power to shape yourself from the inside out. The Dancer. Nietzsche's final vision. Nietzsche's final vision of the highest human being is not the warrior, the priest, or even the philosopher. It is the dancer, the one who can face the chaos of life and move with grace, the one who has suffered deeply but now laughs with joy, the one who, standing at the edge of the abyss, does not fall, but dances. To dance is to affirm life fully, to take the pain, the contradiction, the absurdity, and turn it into something beautiful. "I would only believe in a God who could dance," Nietzsche said. And so too must we become dancers, strong, light, and free. The final challenge: will you say yes? In the end, Nietzsche's philosophy is not merely an abstract system, it is a challenge, a call to action, a demand to rise. Will you remain with the herd, numbed by comfort and enslaved by convention? Or will you choose the harder path, the path of self-overcoming, of eternal recurrence, of amor fati? Will you dare to look into the abyss and smile? Will you reject resentment and take full responsibility for your fate? Will you love your suffering and make art from your scars? Will you become who you are? Because the final question is not philosophical, it is personal. Will you say yes to life? See you in the next video.